And welcome to the wisdom from our strategic partners. This is the Diocesan Appeal Best Practices to personalize, design, personalize, and collect to improve your annual appeals. I am Lois Losi, and I am part of the ICSC faculty. I've been attending conferences for ICSC conferences since 1992 and have spoken at the last 27 of 31. I have been part of the original ICSC Institute in America in Baltimore in 1993, Australia in 2006, the Antilles in 2017, and now the first virtual conference in 2020. So we are so grateful that you are here and part of us today. Let us begin with prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Gracious and loving God, we gather in your name to draw from a wellspring of wisdom that will enrich our lives and the lives of those we love and serve. Through this networking, sharing of ideas, and discernment, though, lift us up, open our eyes, lead us into an encounter with your Son, where we will be drawn to moments of epiphany, deeper self-awareness, and profound grace. In these times of uncertainty and stress, do not abandon us, but pour out your Spirit upon us so that its power becomes our power. Make us good stewards of what we take away from here and inspire us to proclaim the gospel without shame, offer hope to others, and give glory to you in every word we speak and action we take. We pray this through your Son, Jesus Christ, our Lord, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen. So before I'd like to introduce our guests, just wanted to remind you that please ask questions and answers or chat using the Zoom question and answer and chat options, which is directly below the speaker and the PowerPoint space in the Zoom, not in WOBA. Also, we will be going for, the presentation will last until 11:45, and then we'll be opening up and addressing your questions. At 12 noon begins the Angelus, so we will have to cut it off at that point. But I'd like to just say again, thank you to our strategic partners who have supported us so much through the years, and especially this conference. Our strategic partner who we are featuring today is Suttle-Straus, where Theresa Aide has been a part of their serving with them for the last 21 years. She has a wealth of knowledge. She brings to the table 30 years of experience in print and mail services. She coordinates large appeals projects for nonprofits with with the Diocese of Madison, the Diocese of La Crosse, Archdiocese of Newark, Diocese of Duluth, and the University of Wisconsin Alumni Foundation. Her previous role as a customer service representative working closely with production means that she has a detailed knowledge of best practices. Now, joining her today is Kristen Beckett. Wave, Kristen, since your name is my name. Okay, she is the Director of Annual Appeals for the Diocese of Madison. After graduating from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, she began working on the development team with the University of Wisconsin Athletic Department in their suite services area. In 2014, Kristen joined the Diocese in the Office of Stewardship and Development as the Associate Director, and later moved into her current role as Director of the Annual Appeals, where she oversees all aspects of the appeal, along with all other collections run by the Diocese of Madison. Kristen currently lives in Madison, Wisconsin with her husband and her 5-year-old daughter. And to round out our team today is Joseph Lichty, and he is the Director of Stewardship and Development and mission advancement for the Diocese of Duluth. And his special role is stewarding God's gifts to advance the mission of Jesus Christ in all of the Diocese of Duluth. So I'd like to welcome all three of you to our presentation and show us, enlighten us, you know.
All right, let's kick this off. This is Theresa with the Diocese, working with the Diocese of Madison and Duluth. And thank you all for joining us today. And we have a lot of different things that we want to cover, so we'll just kind of jump right into things. Today for the presentation, what we're going to talk about is I want to show different ways that you can design pieces from 1, 2, and 4 color, and kind of get you to think about how you can really kind of elevate how you design pieces and still keep it within your budget. We're going to show also some really cool different things that we did with personalization techniques that you can look at that differently because it's so much more than just name and address. And then we're going to look at collection strategies in how Madison and Duluth, I have an example of Lacrosse too, how they kind of handled their pledge processing. So the first thing we're going to jump into is design ideas from 1 to 2 and 4 color printing. And I'm going to kind of start with something very basic from 1 color, and we're going to work our way up into the 4 color elements. So one thing we're going to do specifically in this presentation is when you look at an appeal package, I'm sure kind of from a high level view, those appeal packages may look very similar to you. So what we're going to do is we're really going to kind of pick apart these different appeal packages, and I really want you to see how different they are and how unique they are to give you some ideas of maybe how you can approach your appeal direct mail package a little differently than perhaps what you're currently doing. So the first thing we're going to look at is 1 color, 8.5 by 11. I think this is probably a pretty basic format. Even just 1 color shell, whether you're doing an appeal letter or if you're doing your acknowledgement mailings or maybe your tax statement letters, you know, imprinting on a 1 color preprint like a letterhead is pretty common, pretty basic. Why I'm showing the other example there at the top, that was a piece that we did from their campaign for the Shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Lacrosse. With Mary Callan, that letter specifically was so long that it didn't fit on just 1 page, and they did not want to have that letter printed on both sides of that sheet. So in that case, we ended up printing it as 2 separate single-sided sheets. And the other thing with that is they wanted to make sure that those 2 letters would be nested together. They didn't want it to be inserted into the mail package as 2 separate sheets. They really wanted it to have that look where those 2 letters were nested together. So in that case, just as an FYI, if you're looking to do something like that, you know, it's kind of from a production standpoint, from a print vendor, how we kind of lay out the preprint and how we imprint that allows us to print 2 single-sided sheets and be able to nest them together. So if that is an option you want to do and you're not sure if that would work, it will work, and it's something that can be done very easily so you don't have 2 single sheets going into an envelope. So going from 1 color, we're going to jump right into 1 color 8.5 by 14. And I think that this format is probably a pretty common format that people use, this 8.5 by 14 with the perfed off pledge form at the bottom. One of the things to think about too, if you're printing in 1 color, you know, as you can see on this example here, we use a lot of 1 color when we're designing it and we know that we're going to print a 1 color shell. We try to maximize as much as we can of that sheet to add color to it. We design it making sure that we are allowing enough space for what that letter content will be, but we also want to try to use as much 1 color as we can, because no matter if you print just the logo in 1 color or if you use a lot of color like we're showing here, it's still really the same price. 1 color is 1 color. And one of the other things too I would suggest when you are kind of strategizing at the beginning of an appeal campaign and you are thinking about doing your initial appeal mailing, and maybe you have a follow-up mailing, and you know, and in both of those cases you do want to do this 8.5 by 14 format. But maybe your follow-up mailing you want to do in a different, you want to have it be a different format, right? You want it to be 1 color, but you want it to look different. I would suggest kind of mapping out what you think those different letter shells would be at the beginning. And I would suggest printing both of those at the same time at the beginning. Kind of estimate what you think a follow-up mailing quantity may be based on your history, because it's most cost effective to print multiple versions at one time. Even if you were to say overprint, let's say you printed, maybe you projected 2,000 more than you ended up using. It's still more cost effective to gang those on a press sheet. If you could kind of think about a printing press, they're big press sheets, and we make multiple versions on a sheet. It's more cost effective to kind of print multiple versions at one time, as opposed to doing one pre-printed shell and then going back later and doing another one. So just some advice on that to kind of think about as you're kind of mapping out your mailings for the year. So we go from one color, we're going to jump in here to two color. This piece specifically that I'm showing here, this is a piece that Joe worked on last year for a seminarian campaign. And this piece, two color, we started, Joe, last year when we worked on this one with Joe, we started this out this actually started out as a one color letter. And we knew when we were designing this that we were going to incorporate images into it. If we kind of go back to what I'm showing here for Newark, one color, there's no photos in that one. But then working with Joe, you had some images, Joe, that you had wanted to use for this one. And so we looked at doing that with the images, but we started out with the images just being in one color only. And so as I was working with our designers, when we were putting those images in with one color, the problem I was seeing is that the images themselves in one color, they were losing a lot of detail. And so going from one color to two color, there's not a huge difference in price. You might see maybe, for example, maybe about a 20%, maybe around, if you're doing 25,000 letterhead shells, maybe about a 20% increase to go from one color to two color, which really is not that much. Quantify it in dollars, maybe about $250 to kind of go from one color to two color. So I just want to show you, so just to give you an example, when I say we added a second color and we added black into this shell, you can see on the left, that's kind of where we started at with one color. But then when we added the black, we started to bring in a lot more detail into those photos. And it didn't add a lot of cost to the overall scope of that printing to add that to the piece. Even in the, if you look at the top part with the logo, with the coat of arms, that adding the black in there too, that helped bring that to life a little bit more versus printing it in just one color.
Hey, Theresa, this is Joe. Just one of the things I would say, if I could, yes, is this is the first time we used photos. And what I was trying to do with Theresa, these are priests throughout our diocese that everyone would recognize. It's the first time we used photos in this particular seminarian appeal. And what I can tell you, there's a lot going on in here, but one of the things is just by adding these photos, we increased our donations by 10% from the year before. So I was really, really pleased with that. My thought here is, hey, I know that that's Father Dale. He served in my parish, and I'm going to read this letter now. Whereas before, maybe, I mean, we know how people tend to read letters and skim and that type of stuff. So that was part of the idea here.
And so kind of going, Joe, then from this that we're looking at here was from 2019, we jump now, this is what you used in 2020. And so we kind of amped it up even more, if you will, this year with doing all 4 color images for this year. We kind of went even a step further with this campaign and used these great you had some great images here to use as well. So we changed this year into 4 color.
Yeah, and that was mainly we're a very small diocese, and it was mainly a budget question. And we were able to do the 4 color for just a little bit more, and you can kind of see how it pops and draws people in a different way. So again, there's a lot going on within the text of the letters. That retired priest there has served in most of our parishes. So again, I'm trying to lead with people that the parishioners would know and be drawn into what he's saying within the particular appeal.
Yeah, and in this case too, we had two different versions of the 8.5 by 14 preprint that we did. There were two different, packages, mail packages that we did, and we printed both of these 4-color preprints at once. And then we created the two different mail packages when we did the imprinting. And we'll show this piece again later when we get into the personalization part, so you can kind of see a little bit more what personalization is happening in there. But I just wanted to show here just kind of that 4-color 8.5 by 14 letter. And again, as you are kind of mapping out how you want to design your appeal packages, look at the difference between if you have some great images like this and you want to do a 4-color preprint, just take a look at kind of where that costing comes in at to kind of change it from 1 color or 2 color or 4 color. So then kind of going from the letters, I want to kind of now jump into brochures. So whether you're including a printed brochure in your direct mail package or not, one thing to kind of keep in mind with that is there's a lot of different options as far as sizes that you can use with the brochures, depending on what size envelope you're using. And also, you can't see it obviously on screen, but the Diocese of La Crosse piece that's at the top, that has a special coating on it. We added some dimensional coating to that to give that stained glass a look, give the stained glass kind of a glossy look, if you will. So there's a lot of different ways with formatting the brochures if you want to try to change it up from previous years, even from orientation. And a lot of what kind of drives how we design the brochures ultimately is like how much content there is in the brochure. And again, I keep going back to the budget part of it too. That's another factor as well, is kind of keeping it to a size that we're going to print on press that kind of maximizes that press sheet, but still gets you a brochure that's a size that will fit in the envelope and still can get all the information into it that you need. So this is a piece that I'm showing here specifically that uses some metallic ink. And so again, typically the brochures that we print are, just straight 4-color process brochures. But in this particular brochure, they wanted to add this metallic ink to the text and some other elements. And it really did give it a very rich look by adding that metallic ink. And again, going from 4-color process to 4-color plus a PMS color, a metallic ink like this, I think that was maybe about a 10% increase. If it doesn't add a lot to it when you look at the overall of what that piece ends up looking like by adding that metallic ink to the piece. One thing I want to point out here specifically, I did speak to Mary Callan at the shrine earlier this week just to see how their appeal turned out for this year. When we presented this, we presented multiple concepts to Mary at the start of the appeal, and we did that right at the beginning of March, and we presented options from a pricing standpoint that were good, better, best. They liked the soft touch coatings, and soft touch coating, it is what it sounds like when you feel it. It's got a very soft touch to it. We looked at using different types of paper, so like linen stocks and maybe cream colored stocks. So we gave them pricing that was kind of good, better, best options, different appeal packages and how those may look. But as you can imagine, we started that at the beginning of March, and then we kind of got, then COVID hit, and they were in the middle of trying to put out an appeal during that time, and they decided that it wasn't really in their best interest to do kind of that best option with special coatings and special papers. So the thing kind of that to keep in mind when you're doing these as a vendor, one of the things that I'm always making sure that I'm doing is I'll quote a direct mail package multiple times to try to figure out how I can get all of the pieces that they really want to do within your budget. So adding this piece with the metallic ink, they really did get, they had their donors this year, they had over 20% of the donors that responded had not given in 5 years. A big key difference in this appeal that they did that they had not done before was add this gratitude report. And they mailed it out in a bigger envelope as well. And then that 2-page letter that you saw at the beginning was something different they did. So I do think that it speaks to a way with adding a brochure and not having it so far out of your budget that you can't afford it, because they had people that had not made donations since 2005 and had numerous donors who had not given since 2006 that had made donations. And this went out like early April, I want to say, that we sent this out. So really kind of right during the middle of the pandemic that this was sent out. And the other brochure here on the side, the second brochure, that this is a trifold. So in their follow-up mailing, they did kind of a reduced version of the bigger one. They put a trifold one in there. And again, one of the things too to think about when you're doing brochure formats, one of the things that we look at is how can we fold it differently. We want to make sure that the flat size of a piece maybe will remain the same. So we try to add uniqueness to pieces with how they fold. Instead of it just being a standard roll fold, you can see like, oh, this is your appeal brochure from last year. And we kind of incorporated some unique folds to that, almost creating a tab, if you will. And, you know, we did that for lacrosse as well at the top. So as long as the flat size of the brochure kind of stays the same to maximize a press sheet, if you will, you can create uniqueness to that brochure with how you fold it.
One of the things that I heard upon arriving in the Diocese of Duluth is that the brochures were pretty much the same every year. So I took that up with Theresa as a challenge to say, I want to do something totally different to make sure that folks would read it, because that's what they said. It's the same every year, so we don't read it. So this was 2 years ago, and the feedback I got from it was incredible, that it just looked different. You can see the huge smiling seminarian there, which just draws people in. So again, I'm trying to do some different things to engage people into reading the content of our message and our mission, obviously.
And so now we're going to show, this is the Diocese of Madison's brochure that they did for the 2020 appeal. And you know, when you look at this, I think looking at it on screen, it may look like you took one brochure and you opened it up and laid the same brochure open on that screen. But when we look into this a little bit further, which I'm going to show you on the next screen, the letter inside of this is different. And, you know, we worked with Kristen to kind of create these multiple versions of the brochure. And Kristen, I don't know if you can kind of speak to kind of the different levels, right? The different types of brochures.
Yep. One thing that we work with Theresa and the designers a lot with is just the different segmentation of our data. So what we did with this one in particular, a couple years ago, you know, going back to the beginning of the slides and everything, Theresa talked about letters and brochures and separating them out, but we've actually combined our ask letter into our brochure for the past couple of years, just kind of for a couple different aspects. From a cost standpoint, it's kind of eliminating one piece. And it just kind of rolls everything together. Everything's very cohesive with everything. And then with our ask letters, in particular in our direct mail piece, we call out specific giving levels as far as what their past donations correlated with. So this particular brochure, we designed just one brochure and we're able to print out 7 different formats of this based off of their previous giving history. So we utilized our different circle levels, our Lumen Christi Society, which are our larger donors, people who hadn't given in the past, our Libans, so people who had given but not in the previous year, and then just what we call our general people who give $250 and below. And with that, we just printed out 7 different versions of this letter. On this one in particular, we didn't address it to anyone, just to see if that kind of made a difference. We didn't say, dear Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so. And that was able to save us some costs from a cost standpoint, not having to do that variable data on there, but still being able to segment the letters enough to a point that we called out specifically where they gave in their past giving levels, thanking them for those donations and continuing to invite people to give or increase their giving donations on that one.
Right, and I know, Kristen, when we worked on this last year, you know, personalizing that piece just for a salutation was going to add a considerable amount of cost to the piece itself for just the salutation, since there wasn't any specific ask amounts in that letter. So in looking at pricing of this, we realized that it was much more economical to just print 7 different static brochures and split out those mail packages, like you said. So
yeah, and I was just going to say one more thing. I think that's really important to do when when you are designing and looking at all the different pieces of your appeal. We'll look at kind of what our pledge card looks like as well, where we do a little bit more personalization in a little bit. But really looking at all your different aspects of your appeal and pieces of your appeal, and making sure that you kind of work with your vendor to make sure that you're getting the best bang for your buck, and different ways that you can take something out of this area to bring it in and maybe utilize the money in a different area, which there's a ton of different features and different things that you can do to make that work for you.
Right. And I think even just in all of these pieces, from the letter and the brochures in different formats, one of the things that I'm always looking at too is even just the stocks that we use. Changing out the paper will help adjust cost, like using the metallic ink, for example, on a piece. I may quote it on, we have house stocks here, which mean those are papers that we have in supply on our floor that are a better price point than, say, if you were to order some special ordered stock. So there's definitely ways you can save cost in production of pieces that allow you to do these special, unique type of printing elements to kind of change up the look of that appeal. So kind of going here from the brochure formats, and I want to jump into envelopes. And envelopes can print, you can print envelopes in 1 color. You can print them in 2 color, as we're showing here with lacrosse. One thing I want to point out specifically on that lacrosse envelope, the Diocesan Annual Appeal logo that you see there, we actually inkjetted that on the envelope. They realized after the first wave of mailing went out, people recognized that Diocesan Appeal logo, and they realized after the first mailing went out that people did not recognize the envelope immediately because it did not have that printed on it. So rather than us going back to press and reprinting those envelopes or imprinting that on the printing press, because we have to set up the envelope anyway to inkjet the address, we can, in the same inkjet line, inkjet a JPEG image, which is what that is, on that envelope. And it turned out really great. It may not represent too well on screen, but that actually turned out really well. So adding an element like that to, say, even a follow-up mailing, like a tagline if you want to inkjet, you have to inkjet the name and address on the envelope anyway. So adding another element like this is not adding any additional cost to that. So just keep that in mind if you want to add anything to the envelope. One thing specifically I kind of want to point out here with Kristen, with your envelope from last year that you guys did, the 4-color envelope here, and here's like the side 2 of that envelope. One of the things that we realized when we did the brochures, and we realized that we were saving kind of this cost with not having to personalize anything. We were not imaging anything. We were not personalizing it. That cost savings in doing that really kind of allowed you to do a full 4-color envelope that we're seeing here. And I think it turned out to be a beautiful envelope, and it definitely stands out in the mail.
Yep, and I think we all kind of know that half the battle is getting people to open that piece that you've worked hard on it, and so really kind of just making it stand out. We send our first direct mail piece to all 70,000 people in our diocese, and we always send it in that larger envelope so it does stand out. But I think kind of switching your head to think about the envelope too as part of the design process and making sure everything ties in. This is going to be a lot of your donors' first time they're seeing the theme or the kind of the artwork for the year. So just kind of thinking about that when you're designing it and making sure that that all kind of ties in. It's kind of part of the design process for us as well. And just knowing that you can, not necessarily having to do a full 4-color envelope, but even just doing a call out on there. It's something that's going to make your envelope stand out and hopefully get them to open that mail when it does come to them.
Right, and even, Joe, on your envelope, instead of just printing just your return address, we added the theme of the appeal in kind of a bigger print as well on the envelope to help draw some attention to that as well.
Yeah, and this was a step up for us. We tried something a little bit different, and I think that was great. But you can obviously look at all these, and Kristen's, you just want to open that one, right? Mm-hmm. So I'll be stepping up the game even for next time, because it's just obvious people get multiple pieces of mail every day, and which one are you going to open there? It's pretty obvious. It speaks for itself. So good job, Kristen.
And just one other thing I wanted to point out too, just as far as envelopes, because we did this one this year, but we have worked a lot with different kind of envelopes as well, just for different segments of donors. We've sent a clear envelope where we kind of designed the brochure to go in there, and that's where the address and everything was printed. We've done just different kind of envelopes where there's kind of like a picture frame in there where we put prayer cards and different things in as well. So, like I said, when you're designing, make sure you're kind of paying attention to that, because it's a whole nother aspect that you can kind of bring into your appeal.
Right. And I think too, I've seen some examples of envelopes where I can tell that they have printed in 4-color, and the only thing that has printed in 4-color is the logo in the corner. And, as a printer, when I look at that, I think if you're going to spend the money to print a 4-color envelope, then let's print a 4-color envelope. To print a logo in 4-color versus what you see on the Diocese of Madison's envelope, that's costing you the same amount of money. So I would, say if you only wanted your logo in the corner, then I would suggest then don't spend the money to print it in 4-color, print it in 1-color or 2-color. And if you want to spend the money to print it in 4-color, then let's print the whole thing in 4-color and really, get the most out of the money you're spending on that printing. All right, I know that was exciting, and now we're going to head into the next section of the presentation, which is personalization, and we have some really, really cool examples of some different personalization things that Joe and Kristen have done. Nope, not that way, this way. So kind of just starting then again with the kind of the simpler 1-color, and this is again using that 1-color preprint and then doing the imprint in black. One of the things I want to kind of specifically call out as we look at this up in the upper left-hand corner on Newark, you can kind of tell the parish name is there. And that's something that we're doing again all in one mail stream. They had a pastor follow-up mailing, and that letter was coming specific from the pastor. And so the parish name at the top was being very programmed as well. And again, that's kind of being done all in one mail process. And you can tell here, as I talked about earlier with the 2 different shells, that's kind of what they had done here. They pre-printed those 2 different shells for those different mailings as they were happening throughout the year. And then here is going back to that piece we showed earlier for Joe. Kind of the pledge card that you're seeing on the bottom was from 2019. And then what I'm showing up above in the circled spot on the actual letter is what we did in 2020. And so Joe, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about kind of what we did there from 2019 to 2020.
There's a lot of personalization going on here, but specifically what we're showing is the call out, that yellow section, which is saying precisely what somebody's gift does, and it matches what we're asking them for in the letter. So typically I'm saying, thank you for your gift of X. Would you consider a gift of Y? And all of those things are variable between the pledge card as well as the call out. And I'll talk a little bit more later about how I'm seeing that be very successful. But that's the variability there that changes based on the donor. So we don't want to be asking someone who gives $1,000 and calling out a $25 amount gift.
Right. And one of the things, we just ended up moving that from the pledge card from 2019 up into the letter into 2020. Just helped it stand out a little bit more between the two. But as we're designing those preprints, that's what we're thinking about as we're designing stuff, is how we can incorporate that in. Oops. So here's an example of 4-color personalization. Now this is when we start to get into some really fun stuff here as well. Doing this again all in one mail stream, and this was parish photos that we incorporated.
Yep, like Theresa said, with this one, we had a group of about 25 parishes that we went around and took pictures of and incorporated those pictures of the specific parish into the letter based off of their parish of registration that we had in our database. So we took, like I said, those 25 parishes, and then those pictures got swapped out, but then we also customized the letter on that as well to call out like a particular ministry that the appeal supported in those parishes. For example, if they had a school, we called out the name of the school specifically and how the appeal benefited that school. On top of that, we still incorporated in the different segmentation levels based off of their past giving, as I had talked about previously. So there was a lot of coordination on this, but it was, you know, just getting everything into an Excel sheet, matching it up with the pictures of the parish, and kind of we were able to work with Suttle to streamline that process. And just kind of the thought behind this was, we know that people kind of resonate more with their parish as opposed to the diocese. So bringing that element of familiarity and trying to really bring in the aspect of, okay, sometimes we hear people say that, you know, what does the appeal do for us? So bringing in an element of really connecting it to their parish on a level that they could maybe connect with a little bit more and be a little bit more familiar with in their community.
And I think, you know, collecting all the photos, you know, that may seem daunting when if you want to incorporate images and different things like that into your appeal packages. So at the beginning, that may seem like, how would I ever get all of those images? So kind of collecting all that and how to organize that. But, you know, once we have a library of those images and signatures, when you start to then do personalization from that point on, it's much easier because now you've collected a library of photos that you can continuously use year after year. It's just kind of collecting those in the beginning. That may seem a little overwhelming, but it's not really. And so this was another mailing that Madison did. I think, was this a follow-up mailing?
Yep, this was a follow-up to the one that you just saw. And we kind of did a different angle on this as far as basing the letter off of previous giving interests. So we've got 3 different letters here. Our first one went to just our LIBUDs and SIBUDs, so people who had given in previous years, which we typically do every year with our follow-up mailing, but then we added in a couple extra aspects to try and capture new donors. We were just ending a capital campaign, which was for seminary and education. So we wanted to kind of capture some of those donors who were ending their capital campaign commitment and try and bring them over. So we had a priest write a letter for that one who had just been newly ordained. And so he had benefited from their gift for the capital campaign. And now he was moving into a role as a priest where he kind of spun that into, now I need your support for the appeal for all the ministries that supports. And he kind of wrote that into the letter there. And then the third one was just a youth ministry, kind of a program that we do. People can attend mission trips and things like that. So the director of that specific program, she wrote a letter on that one. And then obviously we tied all the kind of pictures and imagery in with those specific letters. We changed the heading up with that. But, you know, our thought process too was just, we've got all of this information as far as past giving history, what people have given to. We knew that they already made a donation to a particular area. Why not capitalize on that and try and get them into our appeal as well?
And again, being able to do that all in one, digitally, all in one mail stream. It's just one data file. It's segmented in the data that we know how to assign each letter to each individual. And, you know, it makes it easy to just kind of do that as in one mail stream. And here we have Joe's piece that he did this past year.
Yeah, so this is one mail stream, and what you're seeing here is a very personalized picture to that person in their parish. So when they would open this, I call it a personalized letter because it is. Their letter is from the pastor in his words. That picture of the parish is what they're used to seeing. That crucifix is the crucifix from that particular parish. Also within this, we have a quote from one of their own parishioners, so they would see their name and their quote and their parish once again. So highly, highly variable, very unique to them. I had so much positive feedback on this. People were in tears. how did, Father write this letter directly to me in my parish? And what we were really trying to do is say the mission of the United Catholic Appeal is to really show what the diocese does for each individual parishioner and how they're essentially the hero within just this personalized brochure. So a lot going on here. The other thing that I would say is this story with the hockey player. That's a strong testimonial that we're all used to doing. But for the parish where he's from, their donations right now are double what they normally are. And this, for the whole of our UCA, this launched in April, tough time, right? Right during COVID. There's some other things we did with it, but we saw an immediate increase of like 16%, which is incredible in this year. And it goes to the personalization of what was happening.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to see kind of a video reel that shows a lot of these photos switching out, if you kind of go to the Suttle-Straus exhibitor booth, we actually have the video of Joe showing this piece if you wanted to see that a little bit more online. And this was another piece that we did this past year for the Archdiocese of Newark. And this piece, the graphic, the bar graph that you see there, that's actually a variable element that we incorporated into the piece. So we knew this was a pastor follow-up mailing, and they wanted it to be a note card. They didn't want it to be a letter. So we designed this piece with this little kind of flap on the side that has a bar graph that showed goal to actual. And I think that this is kind of a striking way to incorporate, that element, instead of having that be text in a letter that says what the goal to actual is. It kind of jumps off the page there when they see what their goal to actual is. And we kind of took that off of the idea of those thermometer posters that people use. You see those around sort of in any type of fundraising. And I think that really helps people understand where that parish is at. So this was 219 different parish versions. Again, that was done in one mail stream. And also the letter is variable. Some letters came directly from the pastor if they wanted to partake in this. If not, it came from the director of the Archdiocese of Newark. So again, a great piece that incorporated a lot of different variable elements. And one other thing too to keep in mind is that you can always do self-mailers as well. I don't have these open, but inside there's perf pledge cards inside of here, so you can easily do that as well. Now we can get a little bit into collection strategies. These are just some examples of in-pew envelopes that are done by Madison and Newark, and we also have pledge forms in the back that are done by the Diocese of La Crosse. And then Joe, this is the pledge form that you use for your Catholic appeal. And did you have Eskimos on this one? I can't remember. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So this is based on Nick Prenger's great work, and I'm trying to drive people to give electronically in the upper left-hand corner, but then it's very clear. We're trying to get them to do monthly gifts, recurring gifts, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. The thing that I would point out is the return address on all these is variable, so it's different. Some of our parishes, they want their gifts to go straight back to the parish. Some of our parishes are like, Joe, you collect them and process them at the diocese. So what's variable on here is the return address, obviously the sending address, but also the electronic giving webpage. So if they want to receive those at their parish, we drive them to their parish. If they want to give them to the diocese, they can do that. So there's more variability here than you might realize.
Right. And then these are, this is the Diocese of Madison's pledge card, and 40 different bump tables used in this.
Yep, again, kind of just going off of Joe's variability and the different kind of variable data you can use. We continue to utilize, every time we send out a pledge card, different bump tables. So it's based off of their past giving history. So for their suggested gift amount on all of these pledge cards is based off their past giving history. So when we give the data to Suttle, we let them know what the past giving amount was for the previous appeal, and then the bump tables are created based off of that. So for example, if somebody gave about $1,000, or if somebody gave $1,000 to the 2020 appeal, their 2021 pledge card is going to have $1,250 as the lowest suggested giving amount. We continue to notice that people just keep kind of checking the lowest suggested giving amount, and that's one way to bump them up. They still are going to have the option to write in, as you can see on the other, but we work with Suttle to design about 40 different tables, starting all the way to the people who don't give anything, or who haven't given in the past, to our largest donors. We work to make sure everything looks cohesive. We bring in all of our giving circles and societies and things like that. And we just do a bunch of personalization on our gift cards. So the name, the parish of registration, and then our scan line on there, all different data that we give to them. But really having the ability to do all of those different bump tables is huge for us. And we see good results with that each year.
And this is just showing the Diocese of La Crosse scan code that they use. It's really kind of a 2D barcode, and although you can't see it, that is a 43-digit string of a bunch of different characters that they use on their equipment when they process their pledges. I know we're running short on time, so I will just say, if you want more information about how La Crosse processes their pledges, if you want to reach out to me, I can give you some contact information for the Diocese of La Crosse. But you know, this is just another variable element that we work on to program for them so that it works on their equipment to scan these pledges properly. You know, here's just some examples of monthly reminders where variably there's an image that we're printing at the top each month. That letter is variably imaged. So if you want to do a sort of different type of monthly reminder, you can do this with it being a 4-pager instead of just that single monthly reminder. And here's the monthly reminder for the Diocese of Madison.
Yep, and one thing we just do is add in just some promotional pieces or marketing pieces, things we're trying to promote, or you know, we do a lot with planned giving, different things going on, like Giving Tuesdays coming up, things like that. Just kind of thinking we're already sending these reminders out to people, we're paying the postage on them already. Why not stick something else in there that we can promote a different aspect other than the appeal in those mailers.
Right, we print up several months worth of the buck slips in advance, so they're already printed, they're in inventory. So when we do, you know, the February monthly reminder, we just pull that insert. March, you know, they're already done and in inventory.
We have about 10 minutes for questions.
Okay.
Oh, perfect. Excellent.
I knew we were
excellent.
close to the end.
Okay. So one of the questions, Theresa, you used the term nesting letters.
Oh, yes.
What does nesting mean?
Sure. So think about if you have two 8.5 by 11 letters that you want to get, and you want them to you want them to be sent out so that the two letters are together, folded together, nested together. You don't want them to be in the envelope as two separate sheets of paper, you know, folded as two separate sheets of paper. You want them to be like, this is a letter that's personalized to me, and it's two letters nested together. So how we print that, how we image that in order to do it is, you know, we kind of formulate a pre-print that's really 17 by 11. So if you can picture that flat, so it's really like the front, page 1 and page 2 on a sheet, on a 17 by 11 sheet, and then we print that, imprint that letter. We fold that in half and we slit the two sheets, and then we fold it so that the letters are nested together. I don't know if that makes sense. Okay. So you want to make sure that when you're sending something like that out, you want the letters to be, you know, if you wrote a letter to somebody, page 1 and page 2 would be together in the envelope. They wouldn't be separate letters floating around.
Very good. So what is the source of the photos being used in the brochures? And with that, there seemed to be a lack of racial diversity in the images. Was there any specific focus on trying to incorporate racial or ethnic diversity in the brochures or in the photos?
I can at least speak to the beginning of that. So all the photos that we use are unique to our diocese. So I have no stock photos that I use. And there's unfortunately a reality in northeastern Minnesota that we're not particularly diverse. So that's just the kind of the way it is up here. Yep. So we don't do anything in Spanish, for example, because our Spanish population would all speak English, and it's just very, very, very low. So hope that makes sense.
And then for us, we do, we've used a photographer from Suttle to do like our parish photos in particular. Some images we do use stock, some are just from different offices in our diocese here. So we kind of use a bunch of different areas for the photos. And then kind of as far as diversity goes, that is something we got some feedback on this year. So something we will be working forward to or working on in the 2021 appeal. We do also produce Spanish brochures, which kind of, you know, highlights some different areas. We've got a Hispanic ministry portion in our case for support. So we do highlight that. I don't think there were any in here in particular, but we do try and highlight just kind of some of our Hispanic donors as well.
Got it. Also, if you have any questions, please use the question and answer portion in the bottom of the Zoom screen. Please don't use chat because we're seeming to have some problems with that right now. So another question is, do you recommend changing up the annual appeal packets annually? Like understanding that messages and themes change, but is it a good idea to change the whole layout to grab people's attention?
I can speak on that. We do every year. I think number one, to grab people's attention. And especially just with the different, we kind of go through and pick our theme, and then we get the artwork. So kind of just with sometimes with the orientations of the artwork, things need to be changed up. And then we always tie everything in as far as the messaging goes to the theme and the artwork and things like that. So it just, for us and our diocese and the Diocese of Madison, it makes sense to kind of change everything up and bring a fresh perspective each year.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. I've changed things every year from that standpoint of hearing feedback that we don't read it because it's always the same. So I've always changed that. And this year in particular, it moved from what I would call diocesan centric in terms of what that messaging is, very, very clearly to parishioner or donor centric, and how is the mission affecting them personally, but also in their particular parish. So I'm always going to be looking to change things up to keep it fresh and new, to engage those who are, you know, reading that particular brochure.
Okay. All right. And one of the questions that somebody had was whether they could receive a copy of this presentation. I'm guessing it's come to the virtual booth.
Yes, definitely. We will have the presentation made available that, you know, you can grab the slides if you'd like. And if there's any samples of any pieces in the presentation that you want to get, just reach out to me and I'd be happy to send you samples of the beautiful, beautiful material that they've done if you'd like to take a look at it.
Great. And there will, yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
One of the things that I wanted to talk really quickly about was the bump tables and the asks that I've been doing. We always ask for more than their previous gift. We thank them for their previous gift, but we ask for more. And what I'm seeing is we're actually getting even more than we're asking for. So based on what we might expect, their previous gift versus what we're asking for, I think that's one of the primary reasons why we're showing increases in the last couple of years when before it was pretty flat. So there's a lot of discussion that could go into that, but I do think for annual appeals, for the seminarian segments, different things like that, to use the fundraising best practices of asking for specific amounts connected to the mission, obviously.
Yep, and just to echo Joe, we've seen great results too with the bump tables. I talked about it briefly, and like he said, that could be a whole nother discussion, but just continuing to keep asking those people and continue to bump them up, I think is something that we've seen success with.
Excellent, excellent. There was just one other question, and it goes back to those photos and racial diversity or their lack thereof. Is there any correlation between not having that and giving amongst minority communities? Or on the other hand, if you did include, like Kristen, you mentioned, did you see a rise in giving because people saw themselves in the materials?
I don't know that I have, specific numbers or anything on that. We've done a Spanish brochure. We've only done a Spanish poster, I think, for 1 year, but we've always kind of included the brochures and our in-pew envelopes as well for our Spanish masses and things like that. I think our Spanish we see is kind of stagnant, and we're trying to figure out ways to kind of increase that, and different ways that we can incorporate different ideas and things like that, because it's, it's a different culture and everything. And we do have someone Hispanic on our staff this year that we're kind of going to work with to kind of get her perspective on things, and reach out to parishes who do have Spanish Mass and big Hispanic ministry programs to try and focus on that a little bit more. So, I think there's a lot of room for improvement for us, but we haven't shown a ton of it as far as the appeals that we've done so far.
I think it makes sense, of course. What I'm going to look at doing is trying to acquire the age demographics for those that receive these mailings. And if it's an older parishioner, which most of ours are, to put older pictures in. So, I mean, I think that's just good common sense. Whether or not we can pull that off, whether or not we can afford to do that, to have those kind of pictures taken, etc., is another question. But I mean, it just makes good sense, of course, what the question is asking.
Well, I want to just say thank you to Theresa, to Joe, and to Kristen for sharing all your knowledge with us today. And please, you're invited to a virtual roundtable lunch.
Yes,
Why don't you tell us about this?
Yeah, just really quick, if you liked any of the ideas that you heard today, we are hosting a virtual roundtable where kind of everybody brings one marketing idea of something that they're doing at their diocese. And the idea is that you walk away with 10 new ideas. So if you kind of want to learn more about some of the stuff we presented today from anybody, or if you have an idea that you'd like to share, this is a roundtable that we're hosting if you'd like to join in with us on the 6th.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for joining us today. We're going to be beginning the Angelus at right at noon. So thank you, and we'll be back at 2 o'clock for our next session. But please take some time to visit with our exhibitors at the virtual exhibit hall. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.